Hello, friends. Chris Corsi here, president of Thrive Today, and I want to welcome you to the Relational Skills in Real Life podcast. Friends, I'm glad you're here. Today's topic is on identifying high energy emotions. That's right. How do we get really good at identifying and even navigating high energy emotions? Last time we looked at low energy emotions, and today we're just going to dig into high energy emotions, which is the other side of the coin when it comes to our relational health and the emotions that arise every day in our lives. Friends, it's really helpful when we learn to improve our relational skills to better navigate emotions in a way that matches who God's created us to be. It's profoundly satisfying when we can feel our feelings, share our feelings, and quiet our feelings. And friends, as we talked about last time with low energy emotions, sometimes we get the low energy emotions that drain our battery, and sometimes we get high energy emotions. And high energy emotions are responses in our body when we're trying to reach homeostasis through movement, through activity in some way. And so it's our brain's response that's largely guided by some mechanisms and parts of our brain that are involved in helping us assess our capacity. Do I have what I need right now to deal with this? And our emotional responses are also impacted by previous experience. So what have we used before? What emotions is our regular response when we're faced with some kind of distress? So like water and wind that carves out a rocky landscape over time, previous experience heavily shapes what our brain prefers to do. And the past can largely influence and shape our reactions in the present as well as the future. Now, thankfully, there's something we can do about this when we don't like how we handle high energy emotions. So let's look a little bit about what's happening in the brain and the body with high energy emotions. In 1/10 of a second, your brain quickly assesses if you need to fight a threat, outrun a threat, appease and placate a threat, or even play dead if nothing else works. So high energy emotions tend to be the initial response that we have, and it's what happens when we feel like we need to move into action in some way. We get amped up with high energy emotions, right? We get energized, and our brain wants to do something here. And it's often influenced by what we've done and what we've seen in the past, what we've observed other people do. Usually it's our family members and eventually our friends in our community as well. So our response is largely predicated on previous experience of what we've done before. And from a brain perspective, it's calculating what's needed right now. When I get afraid or angry, I'm often preferring a certain route in my brain. So we might know some people, they just get mad over anything that goes wrong. They might be feeling afraid, they might be feeling some shame, but they get mad or they just worry when stuff happens and they fear the worst. So their body is already responding, oftentimes before they're even consciously aware that they're responding. So we don't often like some of our responses, and we may even fly off the handle when high energy emotions arise. Often these become our go-to responses, whether we like it or not. And friends, this is why we really need practice and we need skills to update our responses. God made us to be social creatures, and we're heavily influenced by our examples and our experiences. And many times these responses are not satisfying, and often we might end up feeling shame or regret later on when our left hemisphere catches up after an emotional response. So, the good news is practice, interaction, and storytelling are ways that our brain can learn new responses. But what are high energy emotions? Well, just to review, high energy emotions would be anger when I'm mad, I want to make something stop, or when I'm afraid and I feel fear to get away. Even joy is a high energy emotion that's euphoric, right? Glad to be togetherness is joy. And we know that joy produces endorphins for the developing brain for the infant as well as for mom. So that joy is meant to be deeply rewarding and deeply connecting and life giving to us. So endorphins make glad to be togetherness an intensely rewarding experience that we want to return to anytime we lose our joy. So this is why the returning to joy skills are so important. How do I get back to that joyful place? And everything from the look on mom's face to the size of her pupils really says to baby's brain, I'm really glad to see you, my child. So our brain wants to get back to this joy when strong emotions arise. And so it's not helpful when we've learned unhelpful patterns that really work against us being a joyful people who are also peaceful and reflect the living God. So, energy producing emotions like anger or fear, they really activate the accelerator in our nervous system so that we have enough energy to move and to react in some way. We have motivation and vitality to help us endure and navigate what we feel. This is where we get impulsive to move in action in some way, shape, or form. So, high energy emotions increase our arousal and they give us momentum to act, to respond. And so the brain's amygdala, what we know in the life model is our level 2 survival circuit, responds to threats rather quickly and engages the body to respond much faster than the cognitive areas of our brain, even the higher levels of brain processing in the right hemisphere control center. So what the amygdala or level 2 does is it employs the hypothalamus, which turns on the sympathetic nervous system, what we know as the accelerator for our nervous system. So we end up with adrenaline and cortisol. As our heart rate increases, our breathing increases, our muscles get a lot of blood flow so that we can quickly move into action to bring resolution. From there, our level 3, which is the cingulate cortex, tries to synchronize with other minds. How can I share this? And we're wanting others to enter in and to join us in some of what we're feeling. And how well my level 3 can connect with another mind really determines how well I can regulate what I feel and even share it with other people. And when we can't manage and regulate an emotion, it will directly impact our level 4 prefrontal cortex, which is what helps us override our impulses, helps us stay non reactive, the people that God created us to be. So, this is why if we don't get the level 4, what tends to happen is we say and do things we later regret, we're not happy with. And high energy emotions will show up in your affect so that you can see the effects and others can see the effects of a high energy emotion in someone's face, in their voice, and in their body. And for some of us, high energy emotions can be overwhelming when they've not led to the joy and the peace that should follow big emotions. And there's a number of common reasons why we might try to avoid high energy emotions. Sometimes our previous experience teaches us a lot about emotions, often it does, and how to respond when emotions arise in us or in other people. So we might have been overwhelmed by the presence of emotions in other people when we were growing up. So we might have learned to avoid high energy emotions because they do not lead to good places. And children with parents who are overly anxious or angry can also teach children to avoid big emotions because they're simply too scary. They're too hard for me to manage. And then you have people that might gravitate toward low energy emotions to avoid, particularly to avoid drawing attention to themselves when there's maybe a parent that has a lot of anger and rage. And our attachment patterns heavily influence the kinds of emotions we prefer. Those of us who are dismissive, we may avoid emotions because we feel like all emotions are bad and scary and they just need to be avoided. Those with distracted patterns tend to run on fear because of unprocessed pain that often leaks into the present. And then when that happens when we become hypervigilant, we become heavily anxious in some ways, and then we feel everything rather intensely. Then there's disorganized attachment styles, which just tend to alternate between high and low energy emotions, where everything feels chaotic or scary or unpredictable. And it can be really hard to regulate our emotions when that's been our pattern. Just today, I was driving to pick up Jen at the church, and I was running late to grab my wife at a Bible study and take her home. So I was running late, and I noticed I was losing my peace with every red light that I hit, as well as some slow, distracted drivers. So I noticed my body was tense and I had racing thoughts. So I took a moment to calm and quiet myself so that I could feel peaceful again. I talked to Jesus about my day. I even thanked Jesus for his closeness in my life. And I just noticed as I interacted with Jesus, I started to feel calm. I started to feel peaceful. My anxiety started to diminish. Now, Jen has a story that she's going to share with us about fear. And let's see if we can notice the pieces of her story that help us identify high energy emotions.
I'm going to tell you a return to joy from fear story. So recently, one of my sons found a little hatchling turtle in our yard. It was just a little bitty thing, and he had it in his hand and he wanted to show it to me. So he brought it up to my face to let me look at it. And just as he did, the turtle jumped and tried to get out of his hand. And I startled. I felt my heart was racing and I just felt tense and scared and just was afraid of a little baby turtle, but I was startled and afraid. And I took a couple deep breaths. My son put his other hand over the turtle so it wouldn't jump anymore. I took a couple more deep breaths. I looked over at my son, who looked at me, and he was with me in, even though I was startled and afraid, he was with me in it. And pretty soon I had settled down enough. He was able to just show me in his hands, and I was able to look at the turtle from a little bit more of a distance this time and enjoy it with him.
Well, friends, Jen's story really gives us some good insight and examples here where she jumped because of that baby turtle. She had a high energy response. Her survival circuit responded to this threat with energy and motivation. She wanted to get away. Her heart was racing and her body jumped. Thankfully, our son was there. He was observing, and in this case, he was a non anxious presence. So Jen could be with someone else who wasn't afraid of what she was afraid. And that really helped her level 3 to be able to feel that, share that, and then calm it down. And had Jen not been practicing relational skills, this could have been a harder experience for her. She could have gotten really angry with our son and snapped at him, or she just might avoid any new thing that my son brings in from exploring the outdoors. So Jen was able to feel, share, and quiet her emotions. And growing our ability at being able to feel and navigate high energy emotions really comes down to the quieting practice and skills so that we get really good at calming and quieting and finding examples of people who are good at the skills that we're missing when it comes to the strong, high energy emotions. And learning to see some of what God sees also helps to anchor us in the storms. What is Jesus doing when we feel this big feeling? What is he up to? And is he worried about the things that we're worried about? So you can think about your response to anger and fear in your own life. And what do you feel when you see other people who are mad or worried or afraid? The main thing we need here is our brain needs practice. That right hemisphere control center needs practice, friends. And that's why we at Thrive Today have developed some really good, exciting resources to help train your brain to get better at these high energy emotions. We have the brand new Return to Joy Habit Builder courses, and there's an emotions education section and even more good information and practices for in these courses. Our Thrive training at Track 2 really heavily focuses on returning to joy and staying relational in upsetting emotions. Learn more at thrivetoday.org. And may this be the start of something good for you today.